And here we go. We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger, with planet.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Climbing down to ST off. Bring in ST off. It's orange!
145! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage.
Look at that!
Put that in the big bag, Eagle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
The methane would be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You dead? We don't need any more of these.
Good morning from Florida. You are taking a live look right now at Launch Complex 39A at the Kennedy Space Center, where a Falcon 9 is ready to launch the Koreasat 6A to geostationary transfer orbit. I am Sawyer Rosenstein, and I will be your host for today's first of a couple of launch streams, hopefully from Cape Side. This mission just about 58 minutes away from taking off, and we will explain everything about the mission, the booster, with the help of some people joining me. As always, I have a fantastic cohort of co-hosts with me, including Cody. How's it going, Cody?
That was a good intro there. A little rhyme. Very nice. Hi, everyone. I'm Cody. I'm glad to be here again for another launch here. This is a pretty exciting one. I'm sure we'll get into it, but thanks for the intro, Sawyer.
Absolutely. And then we have the always awesome Cape crew down there in person. We have Max. How's it going, Max?
Good morning, everybody. And yes, it is, I have to say, a rather glorious morning here at the Kennedy Space Center, where the weather is looking good, some clouds in the sky, but also lots of sunshine, and hopefully a liftoff here in just under 1 hour.
That is the hope. And also out in the field is D. How's it going, D?
It is going well. It's a great day, and I can't wait to see not just this, but hopefully 2 launches here today.
Yes, just about 4-ish hours, hopefully apart, knock on wood. And operating today's stream is Carson, pushing the buttons, pulling the levers, and bringing all the views to you. So, we will talk a little bit about this mission. A reminder, though, if you have any questions throughout the stream, you can tag us at NASA Spaceflight, and we will do our best to answer as many of those questions as we can. But let's begin with this mission, because it's not your ordinary Starlink, since it isn't a Starlink mission. Cody, what is the payload for today?
Yeah, so this is, again, like you said, not a standard Starlink. We are actually going to a much higher orbit because this is a geostationary communication satellite for Korea. This is a satellite based on the Thales Space platform of Spacebus. It's using a particular type of Spacebus called the 4000 V2 platform. That's super in the weeds, but this is, again, going to geostationary orbit, which means that it's going to go into a point in space that matches the rotation of Earth. So it'll basically rest in the sky right above the same position. And so that's great for communications. And this will be the 8th operational satellite in the Koreasat constellation out of the active satellites that they have. So yeah, it's pretty cool to see not just another Starlink flying on Falcon 9 here.
Exactly. As cool as Koreasat 6 was, this is 6A. It stands for awesome, totally. Not that it's replacing the one because the other one is 14 years old at this point. Totally not. As for the booster, though, this booster will be coming back to land at Landing Zone 1 over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, just a couple miles down the road. So this is not a drone ship landing, it is a land landing. But Max, this booster has quite a history.
It sure does. So on the docket over at 39A this morning is booster B1067, hopefully about to embark on its 23rd flight so far in its very busy life, one could say. And its flight history to this point includes, let's see, take a deep breath here. CRS 22, Crew 3, Turksat 5B, Crew 4, CRS 25, Hotbird 13G, O3B mPOWER, PSN Satria, Telecomsat Merah Putih 2, Galileo L13, and 12 previous Starlink missions. So, yes, it to this point has had a very busy life, and because the booster is coming back to LZ1 today, the only ships stationed downrange today are Bob for fairing recovery operations. So, fingers crossed that we can all see this come into action here in just about 53 minutes.
Oh, gotta love an RTLS mission. I mean, we just had one relatively recently, too.
We did, and also hopefully having one more in about 1 week's time, but obviously not here in Florida.
Yeah, and also no landing legs needed for that one.
Correct.
We'll see if they catch another booster. But anyway, right now, from this camera view, it looks pretty good skywise. D, how's the weather?
The weather out here is absolutely gorgeous. So the 45th Weather Squadron did have a 30% chance of violation due to some cumulus clouds. We can see those a bit south of us right now, but it is an absolutely gorgeous day out here. They don't have to worry about the booster recovery weather of a drone ship because, of course, like Max was saying, we've got the RTLS here. So it's the same sort of weather that it is launching in, and it is gorgeous. It is clear skies, so hopefully we'll have that liftoff here in less than an hour.
That is the hope. Yes, it is beautiful to see that. And yeah, for those reading that on screen, again, that 30% is the percentage chance of violating weather constraints. So that is a 70% go. And upper level winds and solar activity are low, which is what we like to see on the additional criteria risk. And the Brevard Emergency Operations Center officially activating their launch operations support for the launch today for the entirety of the window, which goes 12:07 to 4:07 p.m. Although at last check, SpaceX is aiming for the top of that window, which is 52 minutes from now. All right. Let's see what we got here. So, question-wise for this morning's launch, here's one from Flawed Perspective. And they're asking, I don't get how a simple Falcon 9 can make GTO, which is geostationary transfer orbit, and return to launch site. Didn't think there was enough delta V. So, how are they able to do that? Cody, any ideas?
Well, over time, the Falcon 9, actual rocket vehicle has gained delta V due to optimizations they've been able to get. So developing the program further and going into Block 5, they've been able to really squeeze a lot of delta V out of the system. And so being able to send a smaller, lighter payload all the way out to geostationary orbit seems like something they can do now with Falcon 9, which is pretty awesome. And, it's always great to see those boosters return RTLS style. It's always an awesome view, so I'm not complaining there.
Yeah, I should also mention that it is heavily down as well to the mass of the payload, which today this satellite weighs about 3,500 kilograms. And Falcon 9 to this point, I think fully expended, it has the capability of sending about 8,300 kilos to a geostationary transfer orbit. And with this weighing much less than that, well below Falcon 9's limits for a GTO orbital insertion, that also leaves plenty of propellant margin to bring the booster back to LZ1 and save a ton on recovery time. So that is why.
There you go. And also the difference is we're talking geostationary transfer orbit versus direct into geostationary orbit. That is quite different. That is a capability, though, typically that Falcon Heavy has if a customer so chooses. But in this case, Falcon 9 can do the job just fine to get it into that transfer orbit and then let the satellite do the rest to help boost it into its final orbital position. I do want to take a second just thank some people here before we continue on with questions. John T, thank you for becoming a Pad Rat member. Lonesome Valkyrie, thank you for becoming a Pad Rat member. Methane Man with a very good message. Yes, to all my brothers and sisters serving and retired, happy Veterans Day. Yes. And this Veterans Day, we here at NSF honor all of those who served and continue to serve. And thank you all for your service here today. Methane Man also gifting 10 Red Team memberships. And then Anonymous from the shop getting a couple items saying don't play hide and seek in the flame trench. I mean, that's always good advice, especially if it's going to be firing engines into it soon.
That does sound kind of fun, though, I have to say.
It's all fun and games until they light the engines, yeah.
Yeah, obviously, of course.
Which, by the way, Max, we just saw a little bit of venting from the TE. That's totally normal, right?
Totally normal. That is a strong indication that they are moving ahead with operations on the vehicle between pressurizations and, of course, hopefully getting ready for propellant load, hopefully beginning in about 13 minutes time. That usually starts around T-minus 35 minutes for first stage liquid oxygen and RP1 load because, of course, as we know, Falcon 9 and the Merlin 1Ds on the first stage and the upper stage are powered by kerosene or RP1 and liquid oxygen.
Yep, and of course, Falcon 9 using the fast fill method here, the load and go, essentially, where you do it all and then you get off the ground right away because everything's super cooled. And in 35 minutes' time, you can fuel the rocket and then be off the ground. I think it's also worth noting that we kind of teased it at the top of the show, but it is a busy day in space today because, D, we have a whole nother launch still coming up from the Cape today.
Yes, we sure do. So in a couple hours' time from Slick 40, we have yet another Starlink mission. We have Starlink 669, which was supposed to go off yesterday, but then scrubbed due to booster recovery weather. Thankfully, Koreasat does not have to worry about booster recovery weather in that same way. And looking at the forecast, let me see. We don't have too much change. I will keep an eye on the forecast and I will give an update for Starlink's weather later today in just a minute.
There we go, yep. And each of these with basically approximately 4-hour windows. So there's plenty of time in them, but hopefully we will hit the top of the window for each of these right as the window opens, which is usually what they go for here. Let's see. Amiga Clone is asking, what is that structure to the far right of the launch pad? I believe in this view, they're talking about that sort of grayish, tannish looking cylindrical thing. Max, what is that?
So that was constructed to be part of the tank farm system for the Starship launch facility over at LC-39A. We don't really have much information as to if that's going to be methane, LOX, somehow both, but that is currently what that is. And also with work having stopped for the most part over the last year and a half or so at 39A, we don't really have any other information as to what the infrastructure over there looks like or what its intended purpose is. But that tank to the far right is intended to be implemented into the Starship system for either liquid methane or liquid oxygen.
We will hopefully find out soon. Again, hopefully we get Starship from the Cape soon. That's really what I'm looking forward to.
Yes, please. We've been thinking about that quite a lot.
Oh, yeah, especially with the recent flyover, seeing the progress they're doing there, with them picking up pace down at Starbase. It's getting exciting for that. Here's an interesting question. One Air RN, is this a new thing, NASA allowing 2 launches in 24 hours at the Cape? It's not actually NASA, right, Cody?
Well, yeah, because part of this part of the Cape is Space Force, correct? I mean, part of SLC 40 at least, because NASA just controls 39A and B. Am I right in saying that one?
Yeah, I think it more comes down to the range, though.
Right,
this
because
case.
the 45th controlling the range out there, right? I'm not
Exactly.
too sure. Yeah, okay. So yeah, the 45th controls the more Space Force side of the base, while NASA controls the or well, no, they control the entire thing, don't they?
Yeah, so the 45th Space Wing, which formerly was with the Air Force and is now a part of the Space Force, they monitor the range. So in terms of what that means is they will check the airspace, they will make sure there's no wayward boats, wayward planes, make sure that the air is cleared, everything is good to go for that launch. So in terms of the two of them together, it is clearance with the 45th's range to go ahead and get that permission to launch.
It should also be worth noting that a large part of that it has to do when there is a NASA payload on either pad, and there's a non-NASA payload on the other. Most commonly being a Starlink mission. Say you have Dragon on 39A ready for a CRS mission, just like we had recently, and you have a Starlink, a Falcon 9 with Starlink ready to fly at pad 40. Usually, NASA wants about 24 hours in between the launches to review all of the data from the launch on Falcon 9 and from the spacecraft to ensure that everything is green, everything is within all their tolerances, and everything is good to go. So, with obviously there being no NASA payload on either pad today, they are not beholden to that restriction. So that is why that they could, theoretically, launch so close together.
And it wouldn't be the first time that they've launched multiple in the same day either.
Correct.
I've been to at least 2 or 3 of them. I know you've covered a lot of them. And by the way, we now have an official update to the launch time. SpaceX tweeting out that they are targeting 12:22 p.m. Eastern Time. So that is 58 minutes from now. You could see the countdown clock in the top left of your screen has also been updated. So that is now accurate for a targeted T0 of 12:22 p.m. Eastern for Koreasat 6A. All right. Now we've got about an hour to kind of hang out and chat here. Reminder at NASA Spaceflight if you want to get your questions in. While we're talking about Cape Starship, let's do a little speculation. You can see the tower all the way on the right side of the screen there. Gunfox 61, one of our flight engineer members, saying when Starship first IFT at the Cape, they're also saying, will Crispy get talked into going to it and maybe member stream with Sawyer KSC tour? I mean, I'm down. It'll be fun for sure watching Chris finally get to see Space Shuttle Atlantis. That's what I would be looking forward to most. But in terms of the Starship side of it, I mean, we've got Flight 6 coming up. We have the beginning of our countdown to launch coverage happening today as well, where we preview all of the readiness ahead of the flight. When do we think Cape flights? There's all of the live streams, by the way, for Starlink 669, the countdown to launch, and the one you're currently watching, Koreasat 6A, and all of our 24/7 cameras. But Cody, I'll start with you, and then I'll ask D and Max. When do you think we get Cape Starship?
I don't. This is a hard one because it would be nice to have the data point of how fast the construction took for Tower 2's pad at Starbase, because they haven't done any of the pad infrastructure here. Well, they took it down, but the pad infrastructure for this tower is not currently there. So I believe they can, work in parallel at the same time, having both pads under construction. But I don't. It's going to be hard to see because I'm not sure how long that pad construction will take. And then after that, it's just how long is it going to take to actually get a rocket approved to be on that pad. And so I'm really thinking it's going to be a couple years before we actually see a rocket out there at the Cape. I think we're going to primarily see them out of Starbase before we actually see one down here at the Cape.
D, what do you think?
Once again, it's definitely a hard thing to guess on exactly when that could be, but we did see in our most recent flyover, it seemed like Starship stuff here was picking up. So when they continue to work on the tower here, get everything ready, I think recently we saw like the lights, the flashing lights go active on the tower. That's all a good sign that they are progressing, but we're not sure when exactly they're trying to ramp up and have this tower ready for a Starship launch. I'm sure NASA has their concerns with uh, a launch of what is still in the testing phases of a vehicle happening so close to all of their other infrastructure. Of course, now crew launches can happen out of 40, as we have seen. That's a big thing for having some redundancy. It reduces the impact that any potential damage to 39A could have. But I feel like there are still a lot of variables up in the air, but hopefully soon. I definitely want to be here and see Starship launch.
Max?
Sort of to piggyback off of both Cody and D, there is a ton of work still left to do, both at the pad and, of course, also at Hangar X with their new expansion hopefully coming soon with Phase 1. It's one thing to look at the obvious lack of a flame diverter or flame trench over at 39A, but it's also worth noting that they are missing any type of high bay or mega bay structure to, of course, stack the rings and, of course, construct the booster and the ships, which, of course, they need to fly, obviously. So there is a ton of work still left to do just in that front to even be ready theoretically with hardware. And also, I'm pretty sure, given the proximity of the Starship Tower to the FSS, where Falcon 9 currently is on the stool, I'm almost positive NASA would prefer Starship to be in an operational configuration before it flies from here. With all of that being said, maybe I've been drinking a little bit of the Gatorade from SpaceX, and I really am hoping to see a flight maybe late next year, assuming things go according to plan or they're on schedule, or at least in the first half of 2026. But of course, as we've said many times already, there's still a ton of work to do. But I would love to say next year and have that stick.
Yeah, it would be awesome to see it around the end of next year. Imagine we had SLS and Starship both out of the pads
Oh my
at A and
goodness.
B.
Yeah, that's going to be something, and D and I are going to be having an absolute field day whenever that comes. But even if Starship does not fly from here next year, it's worth noting that we are likely to see a ton of testing and new hardware coming in just the next 3 to 4 months, and hopefully at least vehicle testing in terms of cryo. Hopefully by the end of next year, at least in the second half of 2025. So there is a lot coming, and I have a feeling that it's going to ramp up rapidly.
Yeah, and also someone in chat pointed out the important fact that they also don't have an orbital launch mount currently. So
Yes, yep,
they need that.
Yep, and we think that could also be what the new tent going up near Roberts Road or at Roberts Road it could be for. The old ring was constructed over at Hangar M over on Cape Side, but we all know that it's been sitting outside for a while. We don't think it is long for the future. But we don't know exactly where they're building it, but we will have to keep our eyes peeled and hopefully find out on one of the next flyovers.
Yes, and yeah, Harry Stranger with the satellite imagery has been tracking that orbital launch mount at Hangar M, just kind of hanging out there. So we'll see. Here's a question. Cody, I'll ask you. Linda wants to know, what is the flight path for this launch?
Yep. As we were talking here, I was trying to get the orbital inclination. I couldn't quite find it in time, but this is heading pretty straight east. I'm not sure if anyone else in here has the orbital inclination info there. But yeah, this is heading pretty straight east, and it's being injected into a geostationary transfer orbit, which basically places the satellite in a position where it can very easily insert itself into a full geostationary orbit. And then the booster, again, will return to launch site, so you'll see that boost back and landing at LZ1.
There you go. Yeah, all of the geostationary transfer orbits typically go almost due east. So something that we're used to seeing for these, unlike the Starlinks, which tend to go more towards the northeast. Here's one from Robert, who's asking for future reference, where is the best place to see an RTLS? Max or D, one of you want to take that?
You know, it really depends on if you want to watch the launch, or if you want to prioritize your location for launch, or if you want to prioritize your location for the landing. So for today's launch in particular, I would highly recommend going up to Playa Linda Beach, which is just north of the Kennedy Space Center, because I think the border itself is about just under 3 miles away from Pad A, but I think they block off the beach before you get there. So I think Boardwalk 1 and 2 are under 4 miles from the launch pad, which is roughly equidistant to about how far we are currently from the launch pad. So I would highly recommend Playa Linda Beach or the Max Brewer Bridge in Titusville for launch. If you want to prioritize landing, I would highly recommend either Cars Park in Merritt Island, because it has a direct view of the LZ right over the Banana River, or Jetty Park, because that is also right on the Atlantic Ocean, and you should have a full arc view of the entire trajectory. So, and given where the sun is today, keeping your eye on the first stage booster should not be too much trouble, and hopefully that is the case for DNI mounting or manning the cameras. So yeah, for launch, Playa Linda Beach or the Max Brewer Bridge, and for the landing, Cars Park or Jetty Park.
Yeah, it really can be quite the difference. You're still going to hear the sonic booms from any of those locations, so you're not going to miss out on that part. But it is, yeah, you've never seen a launch, I would find a view where you can get both. But if you've seen the launch and you really want to focus on the landing, definitely somewhere like Jetty Park, or if Jetty Park is a little crazy busy, there's also a couple of small beaches just a little bit further south, and little parks that have great views. And in case you want to come see a launch, don't forget, we also did a video, I believe it was about a year ago at this point, but it's still accurate on how to view a rocket launch. So if you ever want to come see a launch, make sure you check out that video first. I did just post a link to it in the chat, by the way. Totally not shameless promotion. Here's one from Jarrett, who's saying, will the Falcon 9 boosters be reused for 25 times? I mean, Cody, we've seen them, this is what, 23 times for this one?
Yeah, this is going to be the 23rd mission for this booster, for booster 1067. So I'd expect to see 25. I don't know. I feel like SpaceX is just going to keep pushing the booster leader as far as they can get it. Or maybe not necessarily the booster leader, but I think they'll get a Falcon 9 to 25 with the pace that they're currently going at.
I mean, yeah, that would absolutely be awesome. And then we'll see if they go beyond that and try for 30. But hey, it's pretty good so far to hit 23.
I mean, Elon himself has said that they want to get Falcon 9 first stages certified up to 40 flights, which of course will take a long time to get there. Probably not as long as we think, given the current cadence. But 25, absolutely. With this one being 23, I believe it is tied to be the fleet leader. I think it's in challenge with 2 or 3 other boosters. I can't remember exactly how many. But 23 flights currently is the highest number of flights a Falcon 9 booster has flown, and hopefully this booster will achieve that today.
That is what we hope. As long as it's not like Koreasat 5A, we're all good.
Yeah, let's not do that.
And here's another one. Cody, stubby nozzle. Yay or nay?
No stubby nozzle.
I can hear the
Incorrect
excitement.
answer.
I'm a day one stubby nozzle hater. I'm sorry.
Incorrect.
Wow. I mean, yeah, Max is very much team stubby nozzle, but I gotta back Cody on this one. No. But Also, in
vacuum
terms of the fact that
nozzles. It's like
yeah, it just looks wrong. Plus the fact it's going to geostationary transfer orbit, 3,500 kilogram payload. Uh, it's going to take the advantage of the little extra boost you get from using the full size nozzle, rather than a stubby. So as of now, we are not expecting it to be a stubby nozzle. I see the fights already going on in chat.
Do I need to step in here so we can tie up the score here in favor of stubby nozzle? Even though we don't expect it this time around, it is a really good use of resources to conserve on that second stage. And I just want to step in to tie up and defend it with 2 for and 2 against.
Thank you very
Oh,
much. I appreciate your support.
it's a tie. It's 2-2. We'll have to see what chat thinks. See how they split the vote here.
it's gonna be 50-50 again.
Yeah,
That's the law.
law of averages at this point. Let's see. Do want to thank some people here for just a moment while people fight amongst themselves. Wilbo Baggins, thank you for the super chat saying thanks for this. Later launch tomorrow. We got Josh Lolton, apologies if I mispronounced that, with a good question here. What changes would have to be made to hot stage a Falcon 9, and would there be any benefits?
Oh boy.
Max?
That is quite a question. Yeah. I think to answer it shortly, at least shorthand on one side, the day of Falcon 9 hot stages was going to be a bad day for a lot of people. I mean, Falcon 9 is specifically designed with its pusher system in the interstage to not have to do that. So, oh boy. I mean, you'd have to completely redesign the interstage. You'd have to reinforce the top of the liquid oxygen tank, which is the tank on the topmost tank on Falcon 9. You'd probably have to reinforce its entire tank structure to take the loads from the upper stage, if that was to happen. It's suboptimal, I guess one could say, if Falcon 9 had the hot stage, because that would be a bad day for a lot of people.
So it would be a stretch, but one could argue that the Dragon in-flight abort test was hot staging of Falcon 9. Would it be a winning argument? I'm going to say no. But I would definitely think that it could be argued that way.
I mean, I don't think you're wrong, to be honest. I really don't, because Dragon fired its Super Dracos while the first stage was still firing. So, technically, I guess it was a hot stage. You are correct. We should get a poll in chat for that one.
And I will say we saw what happened to the Falcon 9 booster after the hot staging. So, they definitely would take a lot of strengthening, a whole lot of re-engineering of it. And so, not necessarily worth it, unlike Starship, where it's designed from basically the ground up for this hot staging architecture.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, by the way, Das, before he was fully with NSF here, he was the Kerbal Space Academy. He was on a boat for the in-flight abort test and has fantastic video of what happened to stage 1 after that separation, aka an earth-shattering kaboom. Unfortunately, at the press site where I was, it was one cloud that got in the way just as we had the intentional rud, I guess. And Charles, thank you for getting a couple items from the shop, saying ready for broomsticks to fly. Let's see what we got. We got the knitted holiday beanie, the dragon one, nice, as well as a little bit of Gateway to Mars action. So thank you again for doing that. shop.nasaspaceflight.com. Jason B is wondering, have there been any boosters that have been retired yet? I mean, Cody, there's a couple that are on display right now across the country.
Yeah, I've actually seen the one in Houston. So there are a couple. I know there's 3 boosters on display across the U.S. So I know at least those have been retired. Have they retired any others? Like I feel like one other reason they might retire a booster is to actually do some like to disassemble it and just look at how so many flights would affect it. Do we know if any boosters have done that?
Well, recently we have had a couple high flight boosters actually be expended on missions where more Delta V was required. So they will basically get these boosters up in their life with missions that don't require that Delta V, but then when they have a 23 flight or a 22 flight booster and they know that they have a mission that requires the expending of a booster, rather than just eventually retiring the booster, they can choose to use one of those high flight boosters as a way to send it off, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's also worth noting really fast that the Falcon 9 boosters that have been retired and put on display thus far are either full thrust or Block 4 variants of the Falcon 9. There's currently no Falcon 9 Block 5 booster currently on display somewhere. I think because it is their current workhorse, they want to get as much performance and use out of them as they possibly can. Also worth noting that there is a Block 4 Falcon Heavy sidecore right here at the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex at the Gateway exhibit. So technically, I guess 4 boosters on display.
Yes, I forgot about that one. Thank you.
Yep, you've got Gateway, you've got the one in Houston, you've got the one in Colorado, and you've got the one out at Hawthorne, which was the first one that landed.
And the one that's currently out in Colorado was in storage over at Slick 40 for a while, and then it was picked up and put on display over there.
That was the one that was literally just sitting out there for almost a year, it felt like, wasn't it?
That's correct. Yep, that's the one.
Yeah. Every time we would go out to set remotes, it's just a booster there. It's like, okay. So glad it got a good home. We are coming up now under T-minus 38 minutes to go until the launch of Koreasat 6A. Cody, do you mind kind of taking us through the countdown of what we can expect now that we hit the 38-minute mark and what's coming up?
Yeah, so here at 38 minutes, we have an event where the launch director will verify that we are go to load that RP1 and liquid oxygen into the tanks, the first stage tanks of the Falcon 9. Again, we're kind of loading late here because we get that load and go with Falcon 9. So we're going to see some quick loading there. At 35 minutes, we're going to see that loading start. So we should see some activity to verify if the first stage loading is beginning, where the RP1 and LOX will begin to go into stage 1. At 35 minutes as well, stage 2 will get its RP1. And then at T-minus 20 minutes, 20 seconds, we're going to see our the very iconic vent to see the to verify that the lines are being chilled for second stage liquid oxygen. So that's kind of the fueling. A little bit after that, we're gonna run into countdown where we're gonna start to get strong back retract, Falcon 9. Sorry, I've skipped over Falcon 9 engine bell chill, strong back retract. We're gonna get our stage 1, stage 2 LOX load complete. Then at T-minus 1 minute, we'll get our startup and final command. It's going to get turned over to the controls can be turned over to the internal flight computer. And then we're going to see an exciting launch there.
There you go. Yes, all of that still to come. Hopefully we have that go for prop load, and they will begin that at T-minus 35 minutes. Then, of course, all eyes will be on the base of the vehicle for frost, and that will be our indicator that the fuel load is underway. And a reminder that once they start fueling this rocket, they are committing to that T0. They have a 4-hour window currently, but if they start loading, they are committed to that T0, which currently is 12:22 p.m. Eastern. All right. Let's take some more questions here. Again, tag us at NASA Spaceflight in chat, and we'll answer as many of them as we can. Amiga asking, this is the third time SpaceX has tried to launch a booster for the 23rd time, right? Max, hopefully you got the numbers on that.
Oh, sorry about that, Sawyer.
That's all good.
Yes. And the last time they tried to do it, at least from here in Florida, was B1062, I believe it was, and we all saw how that went live. That the landing did not go according to plan, and it toppled over on the drone ship, unfortunately. But I believe above 1065 is when they began to implement the more, I guess, sophisticated and self-leveling landing legs, which help the booster to stabilize itself on the deck of the drone ship. So hopefully, well, of course, it's not landing on a drone ship today, is it? It's going back to LZ1. So hopefully we can pull off a successful 23rd flight, a 23 flight booster coming back to where it's supposed to.
Yeah, if it does start rocking once it lands, then I think we have a bigger problem.
Yeah, especially at LZ1.
Oh, yeah. Which, for those who don't know, in reference, by the way, LZ1 Landing Zone 1 is located at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. It is a distance of approximately 10 miles, I believe, from 39A over to the landing zone.
Yeah, it's actually quite a hike over from 39A, getting over to LZ1 and LZ2. I mean, they are on two way different pieces of real estate, and they are quite a distance away from each other. So Falcon 9 has a bit more work to do to get over to LZ1 from Pad A. But technically speaking, launching from 39A and Slick 40 aren't like Starship, where the booster isn't coming exactly back to the launch site. So I guess one could argue that this is a very early rendition of point-to-point, question mark?
Oh gosh, the point-to-point debate. I mean, technically, I guess. It is launching from one point and landing at another. I don't know. Eat your heart out, Starship. Falcon did it first.
Falcon did a ton of things first, to be fair.
That is true. But yeah, also, it is a lot more convenient, it feels like, to do the launch portion just because the roads getting between Kennedy Space Center and Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, they're definitely older roads. There's a lot of curves and whatnot, so it's not the quickest drive to go those 10 miles inside the bases. Let's see. Johan's asking, is it an issue that it launches from KSC and lands at the Space Force Station? I don't think it's really an issue in any way. I think that's just they have it worked out with the range, which the range covers KSC and also covers Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. So as long as no one else is trying to launch while they're trying to land, it should be good to go. You're taking a look now. See if we can see any of that frost or venting happening towards the base of the rocket, which would indicate that fuel load is underway. It looks like maybe a little bit. It's a little tricky to tell. Let's see. Linda Ann asking, by the way, Cody, what is the launch window for the Starlink mission after this?
Okay, let's pull this up here. So, it looks like the Starlink after this 669 is going to be flying. Let's see. Let me look it up in live facts here.
Or don't forget, folks, there's always the Next Spaceflight app and website too, so that way you can even get notified an hour before launch.
Right? Yeah. I use the live Spaceflight app or Next Spaceflight app, and I get a ton of notifications there whenever I forget that there's a Starlink going off or something. So it looks like that the window closes at 8:02 on November 11th and starts at 4:02. So we got about a 4-hour window there. So 4:02 p.m. EST to 8:02 p.m. EST on November 11th.
Which is today. So that is 2 launches on 11/11 with Koreasat 6A and Starlink 669. So a nice double header for folks today.
Hopefully. You know, yesterday the Starlink mission scrubbed due to booster recovery weather. And once again, booster recovery weather is going to be a concern for that launch because, of course, while this Koreasat mission will be RTLS, Starlink will not be. There is a drone ship out in the ocean, and if the seas are not calm, they cannot land. So, while local weather does look good for the Starlink mission with only a 20% probability of violation due to clouds, very similar to the Koreasat, they have that added concern of booster recovery weather, which is moderate today, but would improve if Starlink pushes 24 hours till tomorrow.
And it is worth noting that the landing is considered a part of the launch. It's not like they see the landing weather's bad and can just go, now we're going to expend it. So when they plan to land it, they're going to land it. So they will wait until the weather is good for both launch and landing. And it looks like we now are starting to see some frost for sure on the vehicle. So again, indication fueling now well underway on Falcon 9 for today's attempt, so our T0 is officially 1222. Here's an interesting question from TerraSpace. They're saying, does it compromise structural integrity to have the strong back braces built like a spider web and not have them more like a solid design? I think the biggest thing, is taking a look at the strong back here versus the strong back over at Vandenberg. And the older design there versus the newer design here. And I think Vandenberg's takes quite a beating, if I'm not mistaken, Max.
It sure does, and it's also the oldest design currently of the three. And of course, they're all three TEs here at 39A, Slick 40, and LC4 West at Vandenberg or East. Is it East or West? I can't remember.
It's East.
Forgive me. Is it East? Thank you. All three transporter erectors have a different design, and as you'll see from the transporter erector at Pad A, it has a bunch of white shielding and this white coating around it, and that is to protect it, of course, for the big guy, Falcon Heavy, which does take a massive beating, or the pad takes a massive beating whenever Falcon Heavy flies, in comparison to Falcon 9, which essentially tickles it by comparison. But yeah, the TE over at Slick 40 has almost like a skeleton-like design in that it doesn't have any shielding on it compared to the one over at 39A, and especially the one at Slick 4E. And also worth noting that the transport erector at Slick 4E does not swing itself back at T0. It reclines to, I think it's 4 or 5 degree tilt at about 3 to 5 minutes before launch. I'm not too familiar with the process over at Vandenberg, so forgive me. But the TLDR, the TEs here at Pad A and Slick 40 both also swing back, and the TE over at Slick 4E swings back and holds its position minutes before liftoff and not at liftoff.
Exactly, yeah. It's about 4.5 minutes, just like here, except instead of retracting 1.8 degrees like we see at the Cape, it goes that 4-ish degrees back and stays there. This one throws back once we hit the T0.
And it's also worth noting that transport erector does not have to support Dragon, so which of course takes a much different design of I guess support head on the top of the transporter erector, which of course both pads here at Cape and the Kennedy Space Center both can support.
Exactly. And Cody, for those who don't know, because we were just talking about the strong back and all of that, what exactly does the strong back do?
Yeah, so the strong back is kind of how the rocket is interfacing with all the fueling infrastructure needed, and not only fueling, but also electronic infrastructure needed to make sure that the Falcon 9 is ready to launch. So for second stage fueling, they are actually sending that fuel up that strong back and into the second stage to try and, well, not try to, but to fuel the second stage there. And as well as that, I believe they send up all the electrical through the strong back to charge the satellite right before launch. And then right before launch, they cut that power and put it on internal power.
Yeah, I'd say the strong back is pretty chill in that it provides all the propellants.
I saw what you did there.
It provides the air conditioning, the air environment for the payload. Yeah, it's pretty chill. I only say that because Chris W. was kind enough to give 2 pounds to go into the Sawyer pun token jar. So, thank you. And Emlane Jenks, thank you for becoming a red team member as well. We are now about 25 minutes away from launch. And it's been a busy launch year so far for SpaceX. I mean, we're talking the 110th mission so far this year for SpaceX, 108th Falcon 9. There is the stats. Fourth launch of the month, Falcon 9's 391st orbital flight, SpaceX's 92nd launch from 39A total, 47th landing at LZ1 of 48 attempts. We did have one that they told it to land into the water instead of on land after a thruster got stuck. 24 successful landings since the last one, and the 39th Falcon 9 launch since the last noted failure. The goal originally was 144 launches plus 4 to make up for when they fell short the other year. Cody, do you think they're going to hit that 144 or 148 mark? Chris W. is wondering.
Can you remind me how many launches we're on currently? We're on we're close to 120, right?
110.
110. Okay.
Yeah, this will be the 110th mission of 2024, and then 2 starships.
Gotcha. Yeah. So 110 here. We're sitting roughly a month and a half out, I'd say. So I think they could get 10 launches in to get to a nice 120. So I'm thinking around 120, 125. But if it includes Starship, I'm going to say 127. Let's say 127.
By the way, I stand corrected. The number did include Starship already. So
Gotcha. Okay.
probably not the 144 that they were hoping at the beginning of the year. I mean, that's still pretty good though, considering Max, they've had some anomalies and things and weather, a lot of issues that could have brought that number down dramatically.
It has been a very roller coaster-esque year for SpaceX. It certainly has. I mean, they've had 2 anomalies on the upper stage of Falcon 9, of course, with the most famous one, of course, and them having the liquid oxygen leak out of the one Starlink mission from Vandenberg many months ago. And then, of course, they had the first stage, 1062, land on the drone ship and fall over, which was classed as an anomaly, arguably, but we don't have to go into that. And then there was also the issue of the upper stage from Crew 9 re-entering a bit slower than it was supposed to and landing just outside of its NOTAM zone in the ocean. So that also classed as an anomaly. So they've had a lot go against them this year. I mean, in a way, they are victims of their own success in flying as often as they do, because if you fly this often, you're going to probably run into those 1 in 300, 1 in 400 issues. And especially with the cadence hopefully picking up next year again, even more than it was this year, they may find some more. But that is all what they learn. The more you fly, the more you learn. And Falcon 9 is an absolute workhorse for the company at this point. And they've also had a couple hurricanes wash through, which have affected the Cape in numerous ways and slowing down the cadence and having to stand down. So they've had quite a bit of friction or resistance to that 148 goal this year, unfortunately. But that doesn't mean they can't try again next year to, of course, go for 148 again or go past it.
Yeah, and it's interesting to note with the hurricanes here, it's not just the fact that it impacts the launch site itself. It also significantly impacts the landing weather. So if you have a drone ship downrange and there's a hurricane coming through, that is a reason to delay, even if the Cape weather looks nice, especially ones that hit near the Carolinas with the recent launches that have been going towards the northeast recently for Starlink. We are now at 20 minutes and about 30 seconds to go until launch, but most importantly, 10 seconds away from
There she blows.
The best vent. Oh, there we go. We're actually 0 seconds away from the best vent now. Cody, what is this 20-minute, 20-second vent, quote unquote?
Yep, so this is the T-minus 20-minute, 20-second vent. This vent indicates they're currently chilling the lines to fill the second stage with liquid oxygen. They're just treating the lines, making sure that they aren't going to snap freeze whenever that cold cryogenic propellant moves through the lines. Also just clearing it in general. So yeah, this is a good indication that our fueling is going forward and that we're going to see second stage fueling here in a second.
Exactly. Yeah. For the first stage, they load both of the propellants, the RP1 and the liquid oxygen, at the same time. On the second stage, they begin with the RP1, which is much closer to room temperature than the ridiculously supercooled liquid oxygen. So it takes about 4 minutes for those lines to chill down, and you'll know that fuel load on the second stage for the liquid oxygen has begun once that venting stops. And I mean, that vent also gives a great indication of weather. Looking at the vent, it looks like it's not super windy there.
Well, I'd say we actually have a pretty steady breeze heading south, somewhat towards us from the launch pad. So the trail doesn't necessarily look quite as long as we have seen, but that's mostly due to perspective. We also do have some clouds to the south of us. So while we should have a gorgeous view of the whole launch and even re-entry, I would say tracking it the whole way to landing or the start of landing burn would certainly be difficult. And of course, our perspective here with the trees won't provide the clearest view in that regard. But we definitely have a pretty steady wind in our direction as we watch the vapor blow away from the rocket.
Well, the one good news, at least, about the direction of the vent is the fact that if the wind is going towards you, hopefully that will bring the sound towards you and will make for an impactful liftoff noise. Fingers crossed.
Absolutely. Hopefully we'll get some gorgeous audio this time around.
Yes, gotta love it. And hopefully, maybe with the sonic booms, the little VAB squeal that comes with it.
Yeah, so the sonic booms are the one bit of audio with the landing burn, with that being like south of us. In that regard, the audio will be a bit quieter from our perspective than if the wind were going north. But the liftoff audio especially will be gorgeous, and those sonic booms, they travel so far and are so incredibly loud. So I'm sure we will get a great show of those, and I know Max and I will both be listening for that VAB squeal.
I gotta ask Max and D. As many times as I've been there for RTLSs, I know the sonic booms are coming. You can kind of time them out based off of your viewing location. I still jump a little bit every single time I hear them, even though I know they're coming. What about you two?
Yeah, I would definitely say it's always a surprise because it's not like you can actually see it coming. I mean, you can always guesstimate based on how far you are from the LZ and judging by how quick the speed of sound is. I mean, it varies depending on temperature, humidity, a whole bunch of factors. But there's always a rough range of when you might expect it. But because you don't just hear the sonic boom, even all the way up here about maybe 10-ish miles from the LZ, you still feel it. So when it smacks you in the face, you still, at least I still jump a little bit. I don't know about you, D, but it still surprises me a little bit every time.
Yeah, no matter how much I know that sonic boom is coming, and I'm focused on tracking the rockets depending on how close we are. Uh, I always jump just a bit, and it is difficult depending on if you are closer. Some of the different viewing locations, you're getting the sonic boom well before you visually see landing. If you're farther, it can be several seconds after landing because of that variability, and even things like the wind that will make the sonic boom hit you slightly sooner or slightly later. It's hard to be ready for the sonic boom at that exact moment that it hits.
Yeah, you can always try. My favorite is if one of the first RTLSs I covered, probably the second one. I took pictures. You see the rocket going down, rocket going down, rocket going down. Random picture of some person's shoulder, rocket going down. You can tell the moment the sonic boom hit and I jumped. Let's see. While we got one here for the Cape team also, Angry Engineer is asking, have we seen the chopsticks move at the KSC Starship Tower recently?
No, not as far as I'm aware. Of course, you can see them. They're over there. They are very difficult to miss, but I don't think we have actually seen them move yet to this point.
Yeah, haven't seen as much work going on at the tower. Like you talked about, though, earlier, we do have the flashing white and red lights on the tower, but we'll see beyond that. As of right now, there's no movement on them. But don't forget, you can keep watch for yourself over at Space Coast Live 24/7. As we see that venting stop and pass below 15 minutes to go, let's just kind of give a quick recap for people who might just be joining. Troy was asking Cody about the satellite manufacturer, if we've talked about that yet.
Yes, this is Thalia Space. It is a French manufacturer, and this Koreasat 6A is on their Spacebus 4000 B2 platform. So it's a pre-made sort of satellite bus that they configure to different missions. And so this specific mission being a telecommunication satellite, they're sending that one up to geostationary orbit. So it's, yeah, again, the Spacebus 4000 2B platform from the French manufacturer.
Yep, and as you mentioned, this is the Koreasat 6A satellite. This was going to be replacing the Koreasat 6 mission, which launched back in 2010. This will have 20 different transponders for fixed satellite service, as well as for broadcast satellite service. There will be 6 additional. So that is the plan for today's payload to help provide all of the comms and TV and everything for South Korea. And as mentioned, this one will be going into a geostationary transfer orbit. The eventual goal, of course, to have it move to geostationary orbit, where it will be located at 116 degrees east for its stationary position. Again, for ease of access from South Korea. J-Trains, thank you for becoming a Capcom member. Mind your Capcom and above gets access to the NSF Discord. So check it out, come say hi, and then hang with us as well before and after the Flame Trench, our Friday news show. So there's also going to be some great members multi-streams coming up, especially with the Starship launch currently no earlier than the 18th, 7 days from today. Getting exciting. All right, we are now 12 minutes away. Robert Simmons with an interesting question. We haven't heard much about this recently, but what's happening with the Bahamas launch site? Do we have any indication, Max?
I think Alex talked about this a little bit last week. I mean, they received full permission to do so, and then I think with the Starlink group shell that they were going to fly that way, they opted to fly northeast now. So they had the clearance to do it, but they opted to fly in a different direction due to a multitude of factors, whether it be weather, the calmness of the water at this time of year, multiple factors. But long story short, it is not happening anytime soon, we don't think.
That's a shame. I know we wanted to get a Bahamas cam out there for NSF.
It was a really big deal when they announced that they had clearance from the government down there to do it, and then they just never did. So it was a little bit of a disappointment for sure, because we were looking at putting potentially personnel or cameras or doing something kind of crazy to get a view down there to do it, but unfortunately that is not the case anymore. And we don't know when that may pick up again, if ever. So I guess we will have to wait and find out on that one.
Fingers crossed as you take a look there. Again, at Falcon 9, getting frosty, 10.5 minutes to go. You can see SpaceX kindly pointing out where the first stage is, the second stage, as well as the fairing, currently encapsulating Koreasat 6A. Man, that frost out there looks quite chilly. If only there was maybe some nice knitted sweaters or something that could keep you warm from the cold liquid oxygen or even just the cold weather. Wait, what's this on screen? We have them? We do! At shop.nasaspaceflight.com, we have our holiday knitted sweaters. I still love that one with the Polaris Dawn and the Crew Dragon capsule there. These are actually nice knitted sweaters for the holiday season. I would say enter it to an ugly sweater contest, but they'll lose because they're really nice looking, in my opinion at least. They're warm. There's also beanies that are knitted. There's blankets. There's all of that awesome stuff. And make sure you order it soon, so that way you're guaranteed to get it before Christmas and the holidays come around, because they're coming up in a little over a month. You can check that all out at shop.nasaspaceflight.com, along with other awesome launch prints that you can have, either metal prints or poster prints, mugs, cups, all of that fun stuff. So you can check that out, shop.nasaspaceflight.com. Here's a question from the Visualist, saying, when in space, the second stage's nozzles seem to vibrate. Why is that? Who wants to take that one?
I believe this just has to do with the actual rocket engine. There's certain vibrations that happen whenever there's combustion there. A famous example of these sort of vibrations are with the Saturn V and the F1 engine. We had some combustion instability, and there was vibrations that would occur due to combustion. And I'm not sure if they're talking about those ones or like motor shutdown or engine shutdown vibrations there.
I mean, I think so. There are startup and shutdown transients with any rocket engine, and of course, it's a bit rougher when you have a lot larger nozzle on an engine that is optimized for vacuum use. Hence, the much bigger nozzle. They have to specifically time valve movements and valve openings and ignition timing specifically so that the startup transients and the shutdown transients don't essentially rip the engine apart, because shutting down any rocket engine is far more complex than just closing valves. Like, you have to close valves, or I should say you have to at least throttle down first before closing a valves in a series of events. Like, it's a very complicated procedure, and also the material, the niobium that's used on the upper stage nozzle extension, is very, very, very thin to optimize its weight and performance. So that could. I still am not 100% sure that's actual nozzle movement that we're seeing in the image, or if it's something to do with the camera. But if it is nozzle movement and flexing, that is, I guess, deemed normal within the tolerances for the MVAC nozzle with the shutdown transients. So that could be a potential answer to your question, but we are not 100% sure.
There we go. What we are 100% sure of, though, is that we will get some awesome views of launch from you and D. Max and D, we will let you guys get your cameras set up and get everything ready to go for launch. We will talk to you afterwards.
All right, it's been good. Looking forward to seeing this thing launch, and I'll see you all on the other side.
Catch you later, chaps.
All right. We are now under 7 minutes to go, and that is also an important milestone as they begin the engine chill on Falcon 9. Cody, why do they chill down the engines?
Yeah, so when we're working with these super cryogenic propellants, these super chilled propellants, it's very easy for if you just throw these cryogenic propellants in a room temperature vessel to crack those things. It would be a rapid change in temperature, which can cause all sorts of damage. So in all cases with working with cryogenic propellants, we're going to be kind of chilling those components down to get them to a temperature close to that very slowly before we actually throw the cryogenic propellants in there and potentially shock freeze any sort of components. And especially with the engine, with all the fragile components cooling the engine in those small channels, there's a huge chance that you could just crack something in there. So slowly cooling something down is the best way to mitigate that risk of cracking something.
There we go. So that chill down on those 9 Merlin engines underway. They also do the same for the Merlin vacuum prior to its ignition, you'll sometimes hear the call out during launch of NVAC chill has started. And a reminder, Mateus asking, where will this booster land?
Well, it's a return to flight, sorry, return to launch site flight. So we have this going and landing at LZ1 over back at the Cape. So this rocket's going to be flipping around and burning back instead of landing out in the ocean on a drone ship.
Yep. So just about 10 miles down the road is where that booster will land. Coming up now in 4.5 minutes, which means the strongback should be getting ready to retract. That is that white metallic structure that is up against Falcon 9 that you currently see with that little vent coming out of it. It has little clamps that will come out from underneath the fairing, and then it will lean back 1.8 degrees. It will stay that way until T0, at which point it will throw back out of the way as Falcon 9 lifts off, taking the umbilicals with it and protecting them, hopefully, from the blast of those Merlin engines. We'll also be coming up soon on the conclusion of fueling. So we will hopefully have Stage 1 fueling completed, followed by Stage 2. A lot of exciting things to keep an eye out for here. And also, for those just joining, Concam is wondering, how many flights has this booster had?
So this is going to be the 23rd flight for booster 1067 here, which is quite up there. It's tied for flight life leader, I believe. So pretty exciting flight here.
Yeah, this one going all the way back to CRS 22 and Crew 3 is its first few missions. So quite a few years back. And just for reference, they launch the crew about every 6 months, and they're currently on Crew 9. 3 minutes to go now until liftoff. So again, we will hopefully get confirmation that the LOX load is complete on the first stage. That should be coming up shortly, as well as followed shortly thereafter by the second stage, which you will know that the second stage LOX load is complete, as we will get another vent very similar to the one that we saw at T-minus 20 minutes. Although that one, Cody, is not to chill down the line. That one's to purge the line, right?
Yeah, so we're just trying to get everything out of the lines right before launch. So it's going to be a less of a giant cloud like the T-minus 20 minute, 20-second vent, just to clear out those lines and make sure they're empty. We're also trying to make sure that there's as little gas inside of those stages as possible. So as those cryogenic propellants begin to boil at room temperature, they release, their gas forms. Well, at least for the liquid oxygen. Sorry, for the RP1, it's pretty inert. But the liquid oxygen, they're venting that because, you don't want to leave all that gas pressurized inside the second stage. You want as much fuel, actual liquid in there as possible instead of gas.
And there is that line purge that we're seeing right there. So everything proceeding as we hit about 90 seconds to launch. You can see there is some water pouring out from that tower. That's totally fine. That is the water tower that supplies the rainbirds at the bottom of the rocket that you will see that sort of water deluge just prior to launch. We have confirmation stage 2 LOX load complete. And now the next thing will be at T-minus 1 minute when Falcon 9 enters startup. That is when the onboard computers will take control of the countdown from that point and will almost exclusively basically keep an eye on if there needs to be a hold of any kind. In addition to that, tanks should also now be at flight pressures. The next thing after that will be the go for launch from the team over in Hawthorne. That should happen a couple seconds from now. And we'll keep an eye out on that confirmation. Coming up now, 30 seconds to go until launch. We will be quiet during the liftoff itself. It does take a little bit of time for the sound to reach our microphones, which are a couple miles away from the launch site. 15 seconds to go. Should be about 10 seconds away. Those rainbirds will be firing up towards the base of the rocket, so you'll see a kind of shower almost. And there we go. We have ignition and liftoff. Koreasat 6A on its way to geostationary transfer orbit. It has cleared the tower. And the rocket continuing to fly. T plus 1 minute. Still hear some of that crackle as Falcon 9 approaches max Q, maximum aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. You also see going through the transonic regime there. 90 seconds into flight. I love the plume expansion as it gets into the thinner part of the atmosphere where you can see each of those 9 engines. So Cody, what do we have coming up?
Yep, so coming up here in just a little bit, we're going to see that our first stage is going to shut down. It's running out of fuel, so we want to separate our second stage, let that go into orbit. Our first stage is going to turn around and boost back to land back at the launch site, or well, close to the launch site. While our second stage continues on, fairings will deploy off the second stage, revealing the payload to the vacuum space. And then we'll see some exciting things happen with booster landing.
Exactly. So, bunch of events, rapid succession. We've got MECO, main engine cutoff. And then there will be first and second stage separation. And that looks like second stage ignition. And you can see that second dot there. Yep, there's the confirmation of it on SpaceX's stream. And that second dot, the first stage doing its boost back burn. That is the first of 3 burns that it does to prepare itself for the RTLS landing, making its way back towards the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station and LZ-1. Meanwhile, the Koreasat 6A satellite, on the right side of your screen there, you can see we have good ignition of the Merlin vacuum engine. That is continuing on its way into orbit. And that stage will continue to burn for another 5 minutes, approximately. Next up will be the payload fairing jettison. That's the halves that are protecting the satellite on its way up. Now as it's into space, those are no longer needed. Those are jettisoned just like you see there, to be scooped up from the waters, brought back, and flown again. I love how you could see it in that view too, just tumbling in the background. Cody, so far everything looking great.
Yep, yeah, we see a beautiful flight here, great separation of the fairings, and we got that boost back burn coming back. Some incredible views from the ground, seeing those RCS pulses, those reaction control system pulses, trying to orient the booster in the right direction. So incredible shot here.
Yep, you can see it now on the left side of your screen compared to what we just saw. Those are those little vents, the puffs, the cold gas jet thrusters, helping to steer the vehicle in space. So next up in terms of burns for that first stage, there will be the first stage entry burn. That comes up about 6.5 minutes into flight. That is a 23-ish second burn. All times are approximate that are given to us because it goes off of the actual telemetry coming from the vehicle. So if there's a slight difference, it may be a little bit longer or a little bit shorter than advertised. And I know people were asking earlier about that wobble on the right side of the engine. That totally normal, right?
Yeah, that looks pretty normal compared to what we've seen in previous launches. So yeah, definitely pretty normal.
All right, and again, interesting. You could see just the speed on the left picking up. The altitude is dropping, so we have passed apogee or the height of it, and is going to be picking up a lot of speed. But we should watch that speed burn off quite quickly, just about 1 minute from now, during the entry burn. So, Cody, what is the entry burn, and how exactly does that work?
Yeah, so as our booster's coming back, it's coming back really fast. So it's going to hit the atmosphere with a lot of speed, a lot of energy. And what that does is it generates a lot of heat, right? You see that with re-entry on capsules and stuff. Obviously, it's not going as fast because it's suborbital, but we still need to protect the bottom side of the rocket from all that heating. So what they do is they fight fire with fire by firing those engines to not only slow down the vehicle slightly, but to protect the actual vehicle from the reentry heating by creating a plume that encapsulates the rocket. The rocket exhaust might be hot as it wraps around the vehicle, but the reentry heating is hotter. So this is something that's called supersonic retropropulsion. It was a technology originally developed by NASA to look into Mars landings, but now it's used by SpaceX to return boosters successfully.
Always love the use of supersonic retropropulsion. It's also just fun to say. We should be coming up now on that entry burn. So keep an eye on the left side of the screen. And there we go. There's our view from the ground, our team capturing that burn. And so far, everything looked pretty good there. So now next up will be the landing burn, where hopefully it will fire up all the engines, or not all the engines, excuse me, one more engine to slow itself down, deploy the landing legs, and touch down safely at LZ1. And there we go, the team on the ground capturing Falcon 9's first stage booster as it gets ready to return. That ignition should be coming up in about 15 seconds for the landing burn. Meanwhile, the second stage there, we should have second engine cutoff about the same time as the touchdown. So those will be back to back. Standing by for that landing burn ignition. There it is. We have landing burn. Next up will be the landing leg deploy. There we go. Landing legs look like they're down. Here's another view of it from SpaceX's stream. Look at that tight shot. There's landing leg deploy. And touchdown. Falcon 9 on its 23rd landing for this. Absolutely spectacular. And then, of course, keeping an eye on that second stage, it looks like second engine cutoff. So, a beautiful launch. Max, do we have you back?
Doesn't look like we got
Not at the moment. We'll get our Cape team back and get some awesome reaction from them. For now, though, it looks like the satellite has made it to its initial orbit here. Cody, you gotta love the landings.
Oh my gosh, you gotta love RTLS landings because I love how it kind of gives you a sense of scale of just how massive these vehicles are. Out in the ocean, the drone ship doesn't really give you a sense of scale, but seeing a tree next to the vehicle as it's landing, man, it really makes you appreciate just the power behind these vehicles.
It really does. And you gotta love it. Some of the best 9 minutes of content there is every time.
Definitely.
Now, what's next for the payload is it will continue to coast for a little bit, and at T plus 34.5 minutes is when they will deploy Koreasat 6A into its initial orbit before it works its way up to geostationary orbit. Let's see, I want to thank a couple people here really quick. Anonymous, getting an item from the shop. Thank you very much. Keep up the good work. We appreciate it. And then Ethereal Swordsman, launch, boost back, entry, and landing. Gotta love all of them. Max, it seemed like it was quite an awesome launch, boost back, entry, landing.
Yeah, it certainly was, and the clouds off to our south held up. Oh, can we clear the field mic, please, before I continue? Sorry
Double
about that,
Max.
y'all. Yeah, no. But yeah, beautiful as always. The clouds to our south held off just long enough, so we saw the separation and boost back just fine. Lost it just before landing burn in the clouds, though, unfortunately. But we had a good view all the way up and for most of the way down. It was beautiful as always.
There we go. And this booster making history as the first booster to not only launch, but also land for 23 times. Other boosters that have hit 23 have been expended. So it's, finally getting a 23rd landing. And also noting this was the first RTLS for this booster in its 23 mission history. And by the way, when I say expended, I basically just mean they didn't land whether planned or not, as there was one which was not planned to be expended, but it was still technically expended. Stay tuned, though, because we do have all of our awesome replays coming up. We are pulling these replays for you, so stay tuned for some awesome views. Let's see here. Take a couple questions here as we get those going. Paul Kelly is saying, we've seen how they recover the boosters from a barge in port, but have we seen how they do it for RTLS boosters? Max, how do they actually recover the booster from the landing zone now?
Well, thankfully, the work of the drone ship coming back to port is saved because, of course, the booster can be recovered exactly where it landed, which is the big benefit of return to launch site landings. So essentially, what they do is they, of course, as they do in the port, they put a cap on the top of the interstage via a crane, lift the booster up onto a couple of stands, similar also to what they have in Port Canaveral, where they can sit the booster down, put up its landing legs, get a second crane to secure it, and then lay it down onto a transporter just a transporter this time, just a transporter, from which it can be rolled back over to Hangar X or wherever else they want it to go. So essentially, it's very, very, very similar to what happens in port. Just the process of it being taken off of a drone ship is not there, of course, because it is on the landing zone.
There you go. So yeah, it's a little bit of a less involved process, and in some ways it's actually a little slower than when they quickly take it off the barge and then get the drone ship back out there for its next mission. But I mean, we just had an RTLS there about a week ago. Obviously, the pad was cleared, and Cody, I believe we have another RTLS coming up in just about a week.
Yeah, I hadn't heard about that one, but let me take a look. Do you know what mission it is for, Sawyer?
I believe that would be Optus X, if I recall correctly.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's a quick turnaround time for that return to launch site pad there. So they'll get that down and out, and then return to launch site there.
Yep, the Optus X mission, by the way, also scheduled to launch from 39A, and that one is currently scheduled to take off on the 17th at 4:30 p.m. Or sorry, I meant 39A launch on RTLS. My apologies.
Oh, okay.
Still, let's see here. We do have another launch, though, coming up today at least, right?
Yeah, so we got that Group 669 Block 5, Falcon 9 Block 5 Starlink launch. That's going to be happening in a couple hours here. It's going to be happening, I believe, at 4 EST. That's when the window opens for that mission.
4:02, if you want to be exact, but yes, exactly. We are working on getting those replays for you, so hang tight. We will get the awesome replays of the launch and, of course, of the landing. Let's see here. What else we got? Gojko is wondering, what is that blue line for on the map that SpaceX has up there?
Yeah, so that second line kind of indicates the next orbit that the vehicle will go on, if I'm right there. As the Earth rotates, that line will kind of become its orbit. Am I incorrect in saying that, or is that what it is? Because I'm a little unsure myself.
I believe so. A lot of times, you'll see the kind of line change as they do any burns, but there are no other scheduled burns. So that line should be the current orbit propagated in time, for Alex, the fancy way of saying it. But yeah, basically gray line target orbit, which is where everything appears to be at right now. See, and yes, just confirming from earlier, by the way, Optus X is also believed to be an RTLS mission, so expecting another one in about a week. Wilmo Baggins support saying beautiful presentation, like the way you throw in some SpaceX camera and telemetry. I like telemetry. Gotta love the telemetry. Gotta love seeing the numbers, especially just how it burns off that speed at the very end. I love it.
Yeah, seeing the amount of work that just the atmosphere is able to do is pretty incredible.
Oh yeah. And I mean, we had someone asking Carlos, what is the speed going? Oh, why was the speed going up as the rocket was going down? I mean, that is something that we don't always mention with the way that speed burning off works. You were talking about the supersonic retropropulsion.
Mhm.
So why is it that we still sometimes see the speed go up first?
Well, it's a bit odd with how it works here. With at certain points in flight, they aren't deaccelerating at a faster rate than they are accelerating downwards, right? Right, like gravity's pulling them down, but maybe the grid fins don't have enough air at a certain point higher up in the atmosphere to kind of control as they go to, or not control, sorry, to slow down as they drop. So at certain points in flight, they are continuing to accelerate downwards, but at other points in flight, they have enough resistance to kind of reduce that acceleration downwards. So they're actually slowing down.
Exactly. And speaking of slowing down, D working on the slow-mo replay as well. So hang tight for that. That's always one of my favorite parts of the stream personally. Let's see here. Keith is wondering, Max, any chance of a jellyfish for the Starlink later this afternoon?
Well, at the current T0 of 4:02 p.m. local time, unfortunately, no, because the sun will still be up, thankfully. So at that point, it will be considered a daytime launch. Hopefully, the clouds play ball if they do continue to target that T0. But as they push into the launch window, which extends until just past 8 p.m. this evening, the chances are, of course, there with the weather pending for visibility reasons, obviously. I would say the sun sets around between 5:20 and 5:30. I can't remember the exact time off the top of my head, but I would say the optimal jellyfish window is going to be from around 5:45 p.m. up until about maybe 6:10 to 6:15 local. So the current T0, no, but if it does end up delaying into the window, that possibility is there. But hopefully they will not have to delay any, if at all, let alone to the end of the T0. So could be, but hopefully not for everyone's schedule's sake.
Yeah, exactly. While it would be great visually, it is nice to get it off the ground and go. I'll have to double check with Alex, who I know has the numbers for this, of whether this is about how fast this turnaround time would be between this launch and the next launch, and how close it is to any records. I don't think it's fully record setting, but it's still pretty fast to be able to launch this one at 12:22 and have the next one currently scheduled for 4:02. So it's not a record set, but it's pretty good for SpaceX numbers. I see a slow-mo in the back channel, so that is going to be awesome view, trust me. Kimchi Man was pointing out that looked like the booster was bouncing or shaking a little bit when it touched down. Is that normal?
Yeah, it's pretty normal. When it's landing, it has to settle a little bit, right? You just landed from space, so it's not going to exactly be the perfect touchdown, but those legs are designed to take that load, so they'll bounce around for a little bit and settle.
Exactly, yeah. We were kind of talking about earlier the sort of self-leveling that it does typically when it's on the drone ship. And on land, again, it's still going to be a little bounce. You might not see it as much out on the water because it's also dealing with waves and things. This is just flat. And a light breeze is not a big deal at all for Falcon. I do just have to read this message. Alec Reeves saying, every time my 3-year-old daughter sees a rocket now, she asks if they're going to catch it. And I absolutely love that.
I hope that becomes the norm, you know? That'd be very cool.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love everyone that I've talked to about space stuff now. They all go, oh, wasn't there one where they, like, caught it out of midair? I'm like, yes, there was. Which, did you know? They caught a booster.
What? No way!
Did you hear, Max? They caught a booster.
They did?
They caught a booster.
They caught a booster.
Here's a question from Uzmarkany. So, stage 2, does it need to use its engine anymore for this particular flight?
Yes, there will be a second engine start 2 at about T plus 55 minutes, 53 seconds, just to get it into the right geostationary transfer orbit. And then about 10 minutes later, the actual... Oh wait, I'm so sorry, I'm on the wrong webpage for this. I'm not sure.
This one's about 26 minutes would be about the time of relight.
I accidentally pulled up the Starlink launch that's coming up here in a second. So yes, that is more accurate.
Yeah, it's not noted specifically on SpaceX's mission page there, but there should be that relight. Then there's the deployment at T plus 34.5 minutes. And then there's also the disposal burn too, right?
Yep, yeah. So to ensure that there isn't any debris in these very sought-after geostationary slots, they ensure that debris, when able, is able to re-enter or go into a graveyard orbit. But luckily, with the Falcon 9 second stage, they are able to have enough Delta V or fuel to be able to re-enter the stage in a controlled manner over the Pacific. I'm not sure actually where the re-entry path is for this flight, but they do it over the unpopulated areas, so like the ocean.
Yeah, the typical disposal spots, especially for Starlink missions, usually either end up just south of Australia or just south of South Africa. But this one, I believe, is off to a graveyard orbit, will not have a deorbit burn in particular. You can also see slightly where that burn is going to be coming up on the map, as you see the gray line, which is the current path, and that other blue line where it will be going. So yes, the second stage will be in the same deployment orbit until it re-enters due to atmospheric drag. What a drag.
So kind of a lot like a Starlink satellite there, where it's just in a low enough orbit where a given time it will re-enter safely.
Pretty much, yeah. Which I can also safely say that we have some awesome replays lined up. Carson, whenever you're ready, go ahead and hit play. Let's see what we got. course, the view from the port, right on top of Rusty's restaurant out there. Definitely check it out if you're at the Cape. You can kind of see it to the right of that other booster there. That yellow light right in the middle of the screen. There it goes. Booster flying for the 23rd time. Now had a couple of them that have flown 23 times, and one that has landed and been recovered for a 23rd time, and that's this one. I'm pretty sure Gage was already looking for the birds in addition to the Falcon. Now we've got another one of our views from the press site there. You gotta love it. I mean, Max, this doesn't get old ever, does it?
Oh no, never. And whenever the sound reaches us over here at the hut or at the press site lawn, and either the building starts shaking or we start feeling the pounding in our chests, yeah, it never does. It evokes some of the most primal feelings of excitement that you could ever really imagine, and that really only comes when you see one of these things launch and land up close, which we are of course fortunate enough to do to bring you guys this coverage from today. So. No, I guess TLDR, again, I say it a lot, but it doesn't get old. It never does.
Yeah, I always say the day that it does is the day that something's wrong with me. Because you can see it so many times, and yet each one is still so different. Like you were pointing out, the way the sound hits, the way that the visuals are, the way the clouds interact. It legitimately is so different. It's one of our tracking cameras there as well at the Kennedy Space Center, the press site. Absolutely love it. And yeah, and again, there is another launch coming up just like this one in a couple hours. Starlink 6-69 is currently scheduled to launch at 4:02 p.m. Eastern. At least that's when the 4-hour window opens for it. That one from Slick 40, obviously, because 39A was a little busy. And great views on the way uphill there. Well, that's going. The Koreasat 6A is continuing its coast ahead of the deployment in just a couple minutes. I mean, I don't even know what to say. It's just still awesome.
It really is. I mean, every time you just see the condensation and the trail leading up to the rocket launch, it's just amazing every time.
Also, everyone's still talking about they caught a booster. Or did they hug a booster? The booster caught them. It's, yeah. Our chat's having a lot of fun with that.
I really didn't hear about that. I didn't know they caught a booster. That's incredible.
Well, don't forget you can also hear about the next booster being caught. We start our week of countdown to launch coverage later today as well. Lots of live streams to keep an eye out for here at NSF just today alone with the countdown to launch, Starship Flight 6 in a week. We've got the 669 mission coming up. There is that relight, by the way, that you now see on screen. See the speed picking up now, almost 30,000 kilometers an hour, about 300 kilometers in altitude. And next up will be SECO 2, or Second Engine Cutoff 2, once this Merlin vacuum engine completes its burn. And that will be the final burn prior to spacecraft separation. I know there's a lot of people asking about the silver stuff there, which Cody, that's totally normal. The little silver stuff shimmying, right?
Yeah, that's kind of a mylar blanket that they place around the engine. Up there in space, they're trying to protect against that solar heat, the solar radiation that's actually hitting it. They don't want it to heat up the engine components on one side while having it super cool on another. So that's able to reflect a lot of the heat and kind of keep temperature regulation for that engine.
Exactly, and there's the separation there on that replay. Now I believe we have one of our tracked views from our Cape team. At least one of the fixed views there for sure. You can see a little bit of that breeze there. But again, Falcon climbing up into that light cloud layer there, but gorgeous launch. And here's the sound. And here's another view. God, I love the rumble, mini sonic booms.
Yeah, the interactions with the shocking and all the clouds dissipating on the ground. It's always spectacular to watch.
Absolutely. That previous one was Max's view. This is D's view of Falcon 9's uphill climb just a short time ago. You can also see the sun on that engine bell and on the spacecraft on the right side of the screen. Just gorgeous. To think, this was only 30 minutes ago that it was encapsulated in that fairing up top, riding uphill on this. We are now just a couple of minutes away as well from the separation of the spacecraft of Koreasat 6A, which will be replacing Koreasat 6 in geostationary orbit to help bring fixed satellite as well as some cable transmissions to South Korea. So far, everything has been looking really, really good this mission.
Yeah, this seems like a really good, really nominal mission here.
Exactly. And then again, that beautiful landing at LZ1, our Cape cameras also able to capture that entry, or excuse me, the descent and the landing there.
I do really love seeing the booster right before landing because we always get landing shots, right? We see the engine firing, but seeing the booster flying is just something different just because we don't see that too often. So seeing it fly so close to the ground without engine, angling itself to get near the pad, I always love that view.
It's amazing. And then you just realize how close to the ground that the landing legs actually deploy. Here's a replay of it. I mean, look at that. It's almost at the ground, and just now it deploys the landing legs. And there is that touchdown right behind the hill there. You could see right near Jetty Park.
Oh, wow, look at that.
Another track of the landing. I believe that was the entry burn there. That was the entry burn. And now we can see Koreasat 6A just minutes away from deployment and hopefully marking a successful mission once again for Falcon 9. Also amazing when you see the numbers there. Just traveling almost 34,000 kilometers an hour, 660 kilometers in altitude, and climbing.
It's climbing so fast, and that isn't even the primary direction of its velocity. Is incredible speeds that orbital spacecraft have to achieve to actually get up there and go to these incredible orbits like geostationary.
So next up will be that deployment any moment now. So keep an eye on your screen for Koreasat 6A to be released from that Falcon 9 second stage. There it goes. It is on its way. Falcon 9 successfully deploying another payload. Absolutely spectacular. Gotta love that view.
Is
And-
that lightning that you can see on the ground there?
Might be, unless that's just ice, but it's hard to tell with the little staticiness of the camera, but what do you expect from 800 kilometers in space? Well, we still have the slow motion replay, so stay by for that, but I do want to thank everyone who helped out with the stream today. Cody, thank you very much for joining on commentary.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here for every launch that I can be. It's incredible to watch these vehicles fly, so thank you again for having me.
Yes, and you can see there on screen, we have another Falcon 9 over at Space Launch Complex 40. That is Starlink 669, scheduled to launch no earlier than 4:02 p.m. Eastern. We also have our countdown to launch stream. So our Cape team out there going to stay busy the rest of the day. Max, thank you for joining us for stream 1 of 2 from the Cape.
Indeed, we will keep busy, and hopefully we will see y'all in just a couple of hours. But thank you for coming to hang out with us today.
And D, thank you as well for the commentary and the views.
Always happy to be here.
Always happy to have both of you out in the fields. The KSE team, some of the best people. I love working with you guys. So shout out to D and Max. And also check out shop.nasaspaceflight.com for some of their launch prints. They are two amazing photographers. And a thank you to Carson as well for pushing the buttons, pulling the levers, and bringing all of those views to you today. I have been your host, Sawyer Rosenstein. We will see you all for more coverage coming up later today. Again, next up, countdown to launch, currently scheduled for 3 p.m. Eastern, and then Falcon 9, 4:02 p.m. Eastern. Lots of good stuff coming up. Finally, of course, we have DWise's awesome slow motion views, and we will play that as we sign off for now.